Hi, I'm Pat Henkels. I'm a retired family and consumer science teacher here at the Worthington School District. I taught for 17 years at the middle school, and I am now retired and just helping out and doing a kitchen class here. So since I am a teacher, that's what I still do. So you might hear me teaching you some things about how to do stuff or different ways. So that's kind of how I roll. And today I'm gonna make a favorite recipe. It's my mother-in-law's recipe that they did down at Turkey Day for a few years for marriage encounter. And it's something that I use for, we used it for all of our graduations when our kids graduated. We use it every time we go out and bring to a family's house or something. So we take them everywhere. This is a recipe you could use for, it's now graduation time. You could use it now. You can also take it to your events. This is what they're gonna look like when we plate them, is the BBQ'S. We in Minnesota call them barbecues, and you don't in Texas and other places in the country, right? You'd call this a sloppy Joe. But growing up here in Minnesota, that's what we call it, is a barbecue. So it's made with ground beef, and then you add all kinds of things with it. So if I didn't want to eat meat, I could use lentils, and it'd taste the same. And you can get, you know, just different texture or whatever, but you could also substitute and do that. So I'll tell you the recipe right away. We're gonna use 2 pounds of hamburger. And I just went to the meat market this morning, got 2 pounds of hamburger, which I do have in here already going. I've used different things throughout the years, but I'm using this just to chop up and get the hamburger kind of into as small as I can, little crumbles. So that's what I'm using. We also need onion, a chopped onion. I use a yellow onion, and this is a 1/2 cup. You know, it depends. I can use this is a 1/2 cup. I can use less or more. Some people like onions, some people don't. So I'm gonna put that in there. So I put in 2 pounds of hamburger, and I also have in a 1/2 cup of onion, and that's just cooking, getting going. So now what I'm gonna do, this recipe calls for just a little bit of brown sugar. I have mine stored in this Tupperware container, and this keeps the brown sugar nice and moist in here. And I just use a scoop and fill it up once. You can also use like a 1/4 of a cup, that's about what it equals to. And I put that in later. And then I have a 1/2 cup of ketchup, and I have that measured. Sometimes I think that if you use the exact same ingredients, you'll have the exact same taste out of it. This is what I prefer, is Heinz ketchup. That's all we use at our house. And then I have a can of tomato soup. When we had recipes, we used to have like 1 cup is kind of what this calls for. But now companies, what they've done is instead of raising the prices, they decrease the amount that they put into a can. So it's 10.5 ounces, and that works just fine. You can use Campbell's, you know, you can use Fairway, you can use whatever one you want. It also calls for 2 tablespoons of prepared mustard. Prepared mustard is this, the liquidy mustard, and I have 2 tablespoons right in here. 2 teaspoons of chili powder. It's the ground chili powder, and I just measure that out. And I have 1 teaspoon of salt. I just store mine in a Tupperware container. And then we also have pepper, and I just keep that in the container that it comes in. And so those are all the ingredients. This is a very easy recipe to make because you can just measure it out and dump it in there after the meat is cooked. For the onion, ahead of time I did this, but I just use a yellow onion, and then I do a 1/4 of the onion, a 1/2 of the onion. My daughter doesn't like onions, chopped onions, because it's a texture feel, and that's so understandable. People don't do that. Sometimes they're big enough she can just pick them out. If anybody doesn't like onions, you could use onion powder. onion, salt, and kind of get the same flavor. I think it's so important for the flavor to have included. So I think that's a nice thing. Now, this is what I'm gonna do is go over to the oven now, to the stove top, and we're gonna watch this and see how it's doing. I've started the meat already, so I didn't have to wait so long, and we're gonna start there with that. Now what I did is my ground beef is all ready to go, and it's all turned brown. That's really important. We wanna make sure all the pink is out of there. The reason for that is because we hear of cows having diseases, and there's many different cows that get put together to get a pound ground beef. And so we wanna make sure that we get all the pink out of it when it's ground beef. So my onion was in here, it's just hamburger. And so what I would do next is get rid of this. For food safety reasons, we're done. We don't wanna use this again. For my classes that I taught at the middle school, we don't want to cross-contaminate, so we just are going to use that, and now we're done. Then I would take this. There's different ways to do it, but I would drain the grease. I got 85% ground beef, and I bought this gadget at Adorn, and inside of it, the grease drains down, and the burger goes on top with the onions. It does definitely taste better without all the grease. We don't want too much of that. The first thing it says is to use a little brown sugar. I use a scoop of this. 1/4 of a cup works good. That adds just a little bit of sweetness for it. The next ingredient is 1/2 cup of ketchup. I've already measured this out, and so I'm gonna scrape this into my pan. 1 can of tomato soup. Actually, I really like this brand to use it. Those are my preference, I guess, this one or Campbell's soup. And then I just scrape out the inside of this, trying to be left-handed, which I'm not, but that way you can see it. I also have my mustard, 2 tablespoons of mustard. Let's say you have a larger can of tomato soup, and you can use that one, and my recipe actually calls for a cup of tomato soup. So if all you have on hand is a larger can of tomato soup, go ahead and use that, and then use the rest for making tomato soup. That is the prepared mustard, 2 teaspoons of chili powder. You could either lift this up and sprinkle it in there, but when I tell my kids at school, whenever you sprinkle it in, you're not gonna hit the spoon very easily. It's all gonna go on inside of the actual barbecues, and then you don't know how much you've had in there. It's 1 teaspoon, and I'm gonna do this one twice. 1 + 1 is 2. Some people like to just throw in what they, just looks like. Just looks like 2 teaspoons, you just dump it in there. Since I'm a teacher, I prefer to follow the actual recipe because I figured they've got it really good with the amounts, and I want to copy that. Then it also calls for salt, and I just put mine in this Tupperware container. You could keep it into the round, hard cardboard container too. 1 teaspoon of salt, and 1/2 teaspoon of pepper. If I didn't have 1/2 teaspoon, all I had was 1 teaspoon, I could sure use 1 teaspoon, and I could just fill it up halfway. That is all the ingredients. Now I'm just going to mix them up all the way. Mix everything together. And it looks delicious. This is pretty much how it's gonna look. I put it on a lower temperature because I want to keep making sure that I do not burn it by putting it on too high of a temperature. When I actually ground the hamburger, I do actually have it on a higher temperature when I ground it, like medium high. And then when that cooks and all the pink goes out, I drop the temperature down to like a medium low. and then add the rest of the ingredients, and then it's gonna continue to bubble when it's cooking. Stir it occasionally. You can put a lid on it, and probably in like 20 minutes, a half an hour, it'll be ready to go. The barbecues are done, or the sloppy joes, whatever you'd like to call them. This is how we serve them up, 2 different kinds of buns. You can use whole wheat buns, of course, if you'd like to do that. And this one maybe has a little bit too much, but it just might make a mess when you're actually eating it. If I ever have any leftovers, what I do is I put them in some type of a Tupperware container. Glass container is easy because then you can just put it in the microwave and heat it up. And make sure you have a tight lid. I'm gonna let it sit out for just a little bit. We wanna make sure we don't let it sit out too long before we actually refrigerate it. The longer you keep it in the refrigerator, you're not really gonna get sick. If it is refrigerated, it just might not be as good a quality. This recipe is so good that I don't think you really have to worry about them sitting around for so long. They're really good. I think it's worth a try. I think you should try them because I think they'll be your favorite just like they are our families. Thank you.